Cavell would dictate to me, seated behind his desk in his private office. I would be seated opposite him with my notebook on my lap.
The extreme on the left and the right just take off in both directions when these things come up.
Conservatives are laying it all at the feet of feminists and feminists. Hey, Vicki.
Well, hello, Fiona. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm always doing a little bit okay and a little bit not so okay. And today what I've got on my mind, or what I've had on my mind in the past couple of months in particular, is what's happening with this reaction against feminism, this backlash against feminism. As you know, I was a Democrat. I called myself a liberal before I switched to being Republican. And it's really annoying to see the way to see the way conservatives are really completely denouncing early feminism, like all the way back from the 1960s and 70s, because today, mind you, we're having these horrible problems of, teenagers cutting off their breasts and just all this gender nonconformity and gender misbehavior and gender confusion, and all at the feet of feminists and feminism. And they are not even giving they are brooking no quarter even to the women who were fighting for their rights back in the 60s and 70s, the originals. Not even them. Feminism is the root of all evil. If it hadn't been for that, our society would be, 90% better.
Right, and now I have always known conservatives to consider feminism a dirty word in general, but I'm surprised and a little bit confused about why they are attributing the gender identity thing to feminism, because it's not necessarily a feminist issue, or at least I don't see it that way. I see it as more of an LGBTQ issue, maybe, or I don't know, or maybe in its own category. So I'm curious about what is their argument for blaming feminism for all these things? What is their logic there?
Yeah, I don't know how the whole flow chart of blame works exactly, but it's something like I think it's something about turning away from God, and it's something about refusing your divinely ordained place in the universe and in the family. And I think it's also the fact that people women who call themselves feminists are also the same ones who are standing up for these really awful surgeries. I don't know the thought of them. But it's funny. What's funny is before I go too far with that is that it's a sort of I don't know what these new feminists are. I think they're just all-purpose liberals, because old-timey, old-fashioned feminists like Germaine Greer and even
Gloria
a few others
Steinem.
that I've seen. Gloria, I don't know about Gloria. I mean, I have no idea what Gloria Steinem's position is, but Germaine Greer is adamant that these male to female transitioners have no place in women's spaces. That they are, that the feminist movement was not about them.
Okay, and see, I am totally unfamiliar with this topic, totally. So so you're gonna have to educate me a little bit, and I'm also, and because I'm so unfamiliar with sort of these gender transitioning, trends that are happening. I hope that's not offensive that I called it a trend. Again, please forgive me because I don't know much about it, but I didn't realize it was getting kind of all intertwined with feminism. I definitely didn't realize that conservatives blamed feminism for all of that. So I'm gonna, so it's because I thought it was I considered it an LGBTQ issue, I guess, or topic. Maybe that's not right.
Well, it's all all-purpose, the big blue.
All-purpose liberal. That sounds more like it. Yeah,
and when conservatives see women complaining, oh my God, there's this man in the locker room, they'll say, hey, well, yeah, you started it.
Right.
Because they're. Anyway, what I would like to do, I want to read to you a letter that was written just a few years ago about an incident that took place now about 75 years ago.
Okay.
And I'm reading it because it conflicts with all this conventional wisdom and this canonized belief among conservatives. It shows that women did need. I mean, there was a legitimate need for this thing. So anyway,
and they still do. Maybe these sort of more controversial topics end up overshadowing the real daily lives and needs of a lot of women, where feminism absolutely still has a place. There are still so many unmet needs that women have to deal with.
That's exactly where I'm going with this. And I'll just go ahead and say it right now. The roadmap of this conversation for me is that the vast majority of people who are legitimately in need of of civil rights laws or civil rights principles or something,
Yes.
are the ones who are getting completely lost here because the left has kind of hijacked a lot of these causes. I mean, they've taken feminism and jacked it all the way out to men can go into women's locker rooms, and on the other side, conservatives, the righties, are into this slippery slope theory, saying like, this is what happens when you educate women. Yeah, but the people in the middle are getting lost. So
Yes, of
I'll
course.
just read this letter.
Okay.
And by the way, let's see, what am I going to do? I am going to go ahead. This is about an incident that happened 75 years ago. I am going to name the company.
Okay.
I am going to name the perpetrator, because this person who wrote this letter named it, and they named the and you'll see at the end the action they wanted taken. And but I will not name her. I'll just call her Jane Doe.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, so here we go. This is to SDG&E, the San Diego Gas and Electric Company. And it says, I am a metoo former employee of the San Diego Gas and Electric Company. My name was Jane Doe. I was a stenographer for SDG&E around 1950 in the office of Ray C. Cavell. And she's got this capitalized. I mean, she wants it all uppercase. She's got it, I mean, not capitalized, uppercase. I mean, she wants this guy's name up in lights in a bad way.
Right.
The work was stimulating. I was learning a great deal about company investment, which lasted only a few months until I abruptly left the company. I strongly feel that upper-level authorities in SDG&E ought to hear and know about the undeserved experience of a decent, hardworking young lady. Had the following never occurred, I would have stayed with SDG&E for years. My desk was outside Cavell's office. Every time Cavell's
She capitalized his name?
It's uppercase, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
My desk was outside Cavell's office with two other women, one named Florence, who was part-time, and the other Lillian, who was supervisor. Cavell would dictate to me, seated behind his desk in his private office. I would be seated opposite him with my notebook on my lap. His office door usually was ajar or left open during dictation sessions. Several months into my employment, Cavell called me for some dictation. He told me to close the door. Cavell was behind his desk. I was seated as usual when he began to slink around his desk toward me. By the time he got all the way around his desk, headed toward me, I jumped up and raced to the back of his desk, which was very large, so there was ample room to run quickly. But he got his arms around me, and I had to push him forcefully away. He kept coming after me, saying things like, "You think I'm too old for you?" Garbage like that, until I yelled back, "You have a daughter older than me." A space opened up, enough for me to sprint to the door, which I jerked open. This is her in her pencil skirt and high heels, Of course, I was in a state of shock, fright, confusion, anger. As I stood at the open door, I told Cavell in no uncertain terms that I was leaving that place and to have my paycheck ready immediately. There was no one I could go to complain. I knew no one would believe me. I was too ashamed to even tell anyone what happened. This Cavell guy was a big deal in the company, but basically, he was a dirty old man, a real dirtbag. I never found out if he dummied up company records about the sudden loss of an employee, but I would bet that everything was in his favor. Knowing that Cavell would never admit that I was a terrific steno, I chose to never use SDG&E for references in future job applications. It is my wish that authorities in SDG&E add a note to any records kept of Cavell that he gets a black blot character denouncement. See, that's where, she wants it on record. So, for all these years, I carried the anger and dismay from that horrible Cavell experience. There was no relief from my shame and rage. As I write this essay, I feel justified in telling my Me Too story, which gives me reasonable closeness or closure and understanding of my other Me Too sisters. They have made it possible for me to reach a period of being okay with myself, for which I will always be grateful. The SDG&E logo on monthly bills that I've received all these years always reminded me of the Cavell incident. I couldn't get away from it. Lastly, however, this written account and Me Too sisters have made it less hostile. Jane Doe. So what's your response to that?
Well,
How do you feel
it's
about
just
that? What's your reaction?
it's just so remarkable because it happened so long ago and it is such a familiar story. It is such a familiar story. I mean, I just keep thinking, as I'm listening to it, I mean, it is just as relevant today as it was back then. I mean, really, it just could not be any more timely. And what's remarkable to me is that this happened. This happened to her at a time when there was no resources available, and she obviously had to deal with the whole situation herself. She seems awfully lucky that she got out of the situation as quickly as she did, because I'm sure there's many stories where that was not the case, that they weren't able to get out of the office in time before they were whatever, before it went further, and how much worse it could be and would have gotten, and has in the past for many, many women.
That's right.
So the first thing that kind of broke my heart was that she had no recourse. She had no one she could go to. This day and age, because of feminism and because of all the laws that have been passed in the last several decades, now there is a whole chain of command in an office. I've worked in offices most of my adult life, and there is a whole process that, for you available to you, including, anonymous hotlines, you can call that are third-party hotlines, that are paid for by the company, where you can go if you're still not comfortable, even with, all the protections that are in place. There's just so many avenues with which to deal with that situation now. And it's just stunning to me that there was no one she could tell. There was no HR. There was no nothing.
Right. I interviewed that person, and I think she did tell me something about, like, she knew that she tried to go to someone or something, and they said, you have to start with your boss. If you have a problem, you can tell your boss. And she said, my boss is the problem.
Yes, exactly.
But no, she had no recourse, and
she lost this great paying job. I mean,
she lost. She was the one who had to give up her job. He got to keep his job. She had to lose hers. And I want to tell you, this was not just a frivolous, I think I'll get a second income. She was a single mother at the time of a young kid.
Of course.
She needed the job. And I know this is the next thing that's going to come out of the mouths of the conservatives. Single mother, why wasn't she married? Okay, I'll tell you why she was a single mother. Because she didn't have an abortion. She did the right thing.
Right. Right. Going back to our abortion discussion. Yes, exactly.
Then, of course, the answer to that is, she should have kept her legs shut. And I'm going, that's what men always say on the dating scene nowadays. Sure, men out there on the dating scene are just all about women keeping their legs shut. Yeah, and another reason why she didn't have anyone to go to, did she have a mother to go to? No, she didn't. Mm-hmm. Her mother had died at the age of 34, giving birth to her 9th child.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah.
So, and Jane Doe was only about a year and a half old when her mother died. That was her, she was the 8th, she was number 8. Mother died giving birth to number 9. So Jane Doe did not have a mother that she could go to. She didn't have a father she could go to either, because her father was completely unsympathetic to this sort of thing. I mean, father was, father got himself an evil stepmother for for his second wife as soon as he could turn around.
Yep.
So she didn't have family to go to.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure those. I mean, she pretty much did she made all the best choices that she could make at that time. And it really bothers me knowing that she really needed that job, and she had to give it up because this guy was trying to touch her own boss, on the job. I mean, it's just a shame. And then of course and then it just breaks my heart also that she had to keep being a customer of SDG&E because it's the only electric company in town.
That's right. Yeah. And also, the other thing that's really annoying is that she had to carry this guy's dirty secret.
Yes, I know.
She had to be the protector of this guy's, or she had to be the dirty secret. She had to protect this guy.
Oh, I was also going to say that I'm sure it happened to other women in that office. And part of the reason why, the rise of feminism and a lot of these laws against this sort of thing in the workplace that we have now is so important is because those workplace situations happen so often to women, and they often happen to multiple women in the office. And so she left, and I'm sure he just moved on to the next poor victim. And and in the next case, it might have been a woman who was not, capable, able to just quit the job. It could have been somebody that was in a situation where she absolutely had to keep that job and had to be subjected to this guy.
I was talking to you about how the left can sort of hijack legitimate issues, and I do read nowadays about men who are terrified to even so much as compliment a woman's appearance in the office, like, that's a nice color on you or whatever, because someone's going to go tearing over to HR and say he belittled me, he objectified me, whatever. And so it's gotten to where there can't even be any kind of, intergender, yin yang, easy conversation, innocent conversation. I mean, I've heard that men are just, they're so uptight, or they feel they have to be so uptight that they don't even want to hire women. It's just, this is just a lawsuit waiting to happen. You never know. She might be one of the normals, one of the normies, but she might be Little Miss Lawsuit.
Yeah.
She might be Little Miss Troublemaker. So that's where it's gotten so bad for the women in the middle who need this kind of thing.
Yes.
And even the Me Too movement itself, I think, is now, it's just about synonymous with false rape accusation
Yes,
or false
I've heard that.
abuse.
I've
It's so
heard
sad
that.
because it didn't take long. It didn't take
I
long for
know.
Me Too to be completely delegitimized by overuse of it.
Yes, I know, exactly. I mean, in fact, when you first mentioned, talking about this woman's experience, and we were going to talk a little bit about Me Too, the first thing that popped into my head was I was kind of like, ooh, I'm kind of dreading this because because the Me Too movement was also, I know I say this word a lot, weaponized, and
Yes.
and also people then fabricating stories and all that stuff. So again, we here again have an issue that is totally legitimate. And then of course we had all those stories in Hollywood of people coming forward with, horror stories. But then later on we would find out that some people that came forward were making it up. And then it ends up just watering down or, making it difficult for people to take real people's real stories seriously. And so in this case, it is good to hear about an incident that happened quite a long time ago and yet is so familiar. It's so relatable. And what bothers me is, like you said, the extreme on the left and the right just take off in both directions when these things come up, and then the people in the middle who are trying to be reasonable about things get lost in all of the noise. Then is the issue really properly dealt with? I thought to myself as you were reading the letter, how even with all of the laws and protections that we have in place, how often does that story still happen?
Yes, and now this is where, we're taking a stroll down memory lane. This is where I want to catch up with what I was talking about, canonized wisdom. And this is, I'm going to play you something right now. Rush Limbaugh was a big, of course, opponent of feminism. And he used to say,
feminism was established so as to allow unattractive women easier access to the mainstream society.
that bit of, like I say, canonized wisdom is what people are resurrecting nowadays.
Yeah, and so I thought he had said something effective, like it was for women who couldn't get boyfriends, or I don't know, maybe that's
that too. Well, that too. And I want to point out that whatever you think of them, Gloria Steinem, Germaine Greer, Jane Fonda, Gloria Allred, were not ugly. They aren't ugly.
Right, exactly. Well, and what's interesting about that, I mean, like in the case of the woman in your letter who was a good-looking lady, I mean, she was being sexually harassed because the boss, thought she was a good-looking lady.
Yes. I mean, hello, the irony here. I mean, God.
Yeah. So, what is their idea? What is their picture of the ideal woman? Is it a June Cleaver, 1950s? I mean, is that what they think is women's place? That's really what we should all be going back to.
It's hard to say what they think is the ideal, but I will say this. One thing feminism did, and this is something that actually started with Gloria Steinem. It started with Gloria Steinem. Yes. One thing feminism did was to bring some respect to women who stay at home to raise a family.
Right, of course.
To respect that as a choice, as an actual occupation, as a job, as the hardest and most important work that is done nowadays.
Right.
Little known fact, but Gloria Steinem was one of the people who militated against this notion that, oh, she's a housewife, she doesn't work.
Right.
That very sentence, that very equation, whatever, she just blasted again and again and again, and she would say it's important work, it's difficult work, and it's undervalued. And
yes.
And nowadays, it's just great that women can consciously choose that work over a career outside the home. And so
right.
I think that's what conservative men appreciate, is women who are choosing that role, who are doing what they can who are doing what they can to fulfill that role, and to not make their kids pay the price just so that
right.
they can feel good about their professional accomplishments. it's also getting to be where men devalue a woman who does anything else. There's another of the derogatory terms now is empty egg carton. Women who just, I mean, like it never happens for them, like Jennifer Aniston, they're calling her an empty egg carton because she's in her 50s and she's never had kids and she never will. Oh, that's the price you paid, empty egg carton.
So
yes,
rude.
yeah.
Conservatives have to admit that there is, they have to admit that, okay, I understand that there's, some of the topics have gone off the rails on the left, but they have to acknowledge there is a place for feminism in our society because, imagine if we hadn't passed, so part of the reason like sexual harassment in the workplace, for instance, was so important was because it prevented, losing female employees, like in the case of the woman in your letter.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm sure that, that was happening. And so it's like employee retention.
Yeah.
And conservatives have to also acknowledge that our economy is stronger with women working, obviously. I mean, we have you have millions of more employees in your pool to choose from when women are able to work and feel safe working.
Right.
And choose a career, a certain career path. It's incredible boost for our economy.
Yeah.
So conservatives have to acknowledge that the feminist movement and some of the laws that were put into place to protect women and give women more opportunities is good for our country. I don't consider the transgender thing. I don't know very little about it. I can't speak intelligently about it because I don't know much about it. But I don't see that at all as being a problem as a result of feminism. And I just don't get where that's coming from. And I feel like it's going to end up harming women if they start blaming everything on feminism.
This is where I think conservatives make the mistake of conflating all women with all liberals and all extreme leftist hijackers of legitimate issues. I mean, this is where conservatives they just do this big conflation, slippery slope act. And the reason why this transgender issue gets mixed up in feminism is that it's the big blue ball, the big blue Borg over there, where all these issues are inflated and jacked out of all proportion to the people for whom the laws and the principles were originally established. There's a law being considered in our state right now that would require teachers to observe little kids' gender switching pronouns without telling the parents. Like 12-year-old kid comes, 12-year-old kid tells the teacher, I want to be called, I don't want to be Jane anymore. I want to be John, and I want you to call me he, him, and I want you to treat me like a boy. And the teacher has to do that and is not allowed to tell the parents. This kid has changed gender at school. This kid is like socially transitioning at school without telling the parents.
Well, and this business of not telling their parents seems really shady.
I know.
Really shady.
Yeah.
What is the agenda there? I mean, that seems like some kind of movement or something to influence kids while they're away from their parents.
Yes, exactly.
And is really disturbing.
That is disturbing.
It just doesn't see it. Something's not right about that. I can understand, that like kids might need a safe person to talk to a school counselor or something, and those conversations have to be confidential. But for the rest of the, my cousin actually worked as a school counselor, and I mean, obviously she can't talk about all the different things people talk to her, but she had to keep their talks in confidence. But she was the only one. She's the school psychologist. The other, just a regular teacher, and a kid kind of publicly in school, changing their or transitioning their gender, and then the teacher doesn't have to tell the parents. That seems really extreme, especially because we already have school psychologists where they can talk to them about anything in confidence.
Yeah.
What's the
real agenda? Well, Vicki, I'll tell you, it's a fact about virtually all cults that they aim to sever family ties. They aim to isolate you, to take you away from your friends, your close friends, your confidants, and to be the sole owners of your emotional well-being. You can come to us and only us.
Right.
And so you have to just put it down to, I mean, it's a cult. It's a mental illness of its own, and it seeks to, perpetuate itself by converting members and getting them when they're young. That's the only thing I could offer for now. That's one of the theories out there. But
Right.
they'll tell you, just wide-eyed, frozen smile. We aim to include everyone. We aim to make a safe place for all children who are changing, who are feeling conflicted in their identity. They'll make it all sound smooth and rational and friendly and happy fun camp, but you have to obviously go beyond those words because there's something else going on.
Because like I said, I mean I know this from a family member who actually has this job. There really is already safe places for kids to go to talk to somebody at school.
Yeah.
Including issues like this, and that those people are very well trained to do their jobs. The average teacher is not trained to handle that at all.
Right.
Why do conservatives see that as just being driven by feminism? Again, I really consider this an LGBTQ. Am I saying it right?
I think they see it as having been catalyzed by feminism all the way back when, or I don't know. Try another analogy. It was this evil seed that grew.
Okay, well,
this cancer.
Well, do they blame other movements like African American rights movements or gay rights movements? Do they blame that all on feminism also?
As far as the civil rights movements go, yeah, that's another one where they'll tell you it was jacked. It was jacked into this DEI nightmare we have now, where, God, airline pilots don't have to know how to fly a plane. They just have to have some sort of authentic life experience rather than knowledge of aviation.
What did Bush? So I wasn't a huge fan of President Bush, but he does have one line that I appreciated: the soft bigotry of low expectations. Wasn't that a Bush quote? Yeah. Again, this is why we enjoy talking to each other, because we are opposite sides of the political spectrum and don't really quite fit in our respective parties.
Right.
Because they've become so extreme, and.
Yeah.
And this is just yet another example of, here we have a very, respectable woman in your letter who went through an experience at work that is just all too familiar here 75 years later, and very well illustrates why we need feminism. And it's just another example of, kind of a story of those of us in the middle, that would like all of, some of these social movements to just continue this reasonable path of protecting our rights.
Yeah.
I get the sense that the extremes on both sides, that there is, there's some, it's driven by something, whether it's trying to make money, by getting people riled up, or get views and clicks and likes.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it influences people, and it influences what people think about things, and then all of a sudden we can't have a civilized conversation about these things anymore.
Yeah, we can't have a civilized conversation, and we cannot make a legitimate appeal. I can't say,
Right.
Please get the man out of the locker room without some man saying, oh, now you want to be traditional. No, please, no, look, just for God's sake, protect me. Oh, now you want to be protected. Oh, no, open your own door, bitch. So, yeah.
And I actually really I consider myself a feminist totally, and I really enjoy having men open the door for me. I like that.
Me too.
It makes me feel, good and protected, and
Yes.
I enjoy it, and I wish people understood that it's okay and very common to be a feminist and also like to have the door. I like to have my dinner paid for on a date.